Hello and welcome to Vegas Aces. I'm your host, Heather Ferris, and we have a special guest with us, Marc from TruePokerDealer.com. Thank you so much for being here today, Marc.
Appreciate that. Happy to be here as always.
Yay. And we are going to be talking about the easy road to dealing poker. Now, I am really excited about this topic, so let's just jump right on in. Marc, what is the easy road to dealing poker? Can I just drive up and start dealing poker? Is there a road I should turn down? Maybe a left, right?
So this is a metaphor, of course. You cannot just drive up to a poker room and start dealing, although you can try, but they're not going to let you. So in this metaphor, basically in poker, there are other positions that do not require training really in order to get your foot in the door. And recently, I decided that I would interview someone in one of those positions. Now, I've been a dealer, sure, because I am True Poker Dealer. I've been in casinos since 2007, but I've also been a supervisor and a shift manager. So I've hired a lot of these positions, and I have a lot of unique insight into these particular roles and how you get into the casino. So I decided recently at Texas Card House in Dallas, I would interview one of the chip runners there who had gotten his foot in the door and was on the path to dealing. And that was it was a really interesting interview, and you can check that out if you want. But it highlights a good point that you can in poker just get your foot in the door by doing one of these jobs. And I want to sort of describe what the job is and a little bit of how all of that works.
And if you guys are interested, we'll have the link in the description below, so that way you could just click and watch that video.
Appreciate that very much. So basically, there are actually more than one position that you can use to get your foot in the door, and I'm going to focus on the chip runner position right now. In poker, picture a big poker room, or even a medium-sized poker room, and during every single hand of poker, the dealer is making change in order to drop rake, or in order to give people change for tips, or making change for bets that are using oversized chips and stuff like that. And over time, you often run out of chips in your bank. Also in poker, you're doing buy-ins at the table. And so you need fills at the table sometimes. You need someone to do the buy-ins when you don't have enough money at the table. That's sort of a unique problem to poker that you don't always see in table games where you run out of chips to sell, because the procedure is very different. And one of the roles of a chip runner, who you can literally just get the job as a chip runner with one interview, okay? One of the roles of a chip runner is to go to the tables in poker, receive the money, which this is done by security in table games most of the time, right?
Yeah, it's normally security that does this.
So you receive the money from the dealer, and then you go and you replenish the chips according to what makes sense for the situation at that table. And the chip runner is an interesting role because in table games, who makes the decision for how many chips come to the table?
The supervisor. So the floor supervisor is the one that keeps his eye on the rack, and he determines if there's too many chips or too few chips, and there needs to either be a fill or a credit. And then if a fill or credit is needed, they put a request in with the cage, and then the cage sends the chips over via the security guard.
So in poker, it's not that big a deal like that because there's not as much money involved generally, and there's a repeatable cycle of needing chips, and you almost never have too many. I can't think of one time I've ever had to see a credit because most of the time there's no color ups when a player is done to leave. They just take all the chips off the table that they're playing with and go. So because of that, the dealer will give they'll usually count out the money. Sometimes they literally just give it to the chip runner and they count it in their hand. Yeah, it's super weird for someone who's been in table games. This took some getting used to for the procedure that some rooms have. But whatever the procedure, there's 30 different versions of this in poker across different properties. Whatever the procedure is, a good chip runner is actually left to make the decision for how much of the fill to get. And a lot of the time, the dealer is the one that dictates what they're getting. But that's one of the roles of the chip runner. Okay,
that's pretty amazing.
It's interesting. It's just like sort of quick and simple. So I know the Hard Rock in Hollywood. I went and played there maybe a year ago or so, and I noticed that they have the chip runner eyeball the table and just show up at the table with the right amount of chips for the fill, and they do one transaction like that. It's pretty quick and simple.
I can't believe that they would leave money decisions up to a person who only got the job through like an application and an interview.
But they do.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's one of the roles of a chip runner. And another role of the chip runner is when players at, say, a 5-10 no limit, 2-5 no limit, something like that, need to get a buy-in. A lot of the time, there won't be enough money in the actual well to do that, because the purpose of the well is not really to get buy-in. So the dealer or the player will call over a chip runner, and it's the same thing if they want a color up of some sort. Maybe they have a lot of $1,000 in red, and they just don't want all that on the table in front of them. The chip runner fills that role as well.
Okay. Wow. Do they have any other roles or responsibilities, or is that just pretty much it?
They do, depending on where they work. Like in Texas, the way that the poker room makes money is they have an hourly fee that the player pays in order to be able to play there. And when they run out of time, then the chip runner is the one that will get them more time so they can continue playing without missing hands.
Oh.
Another thing that chip runners do, sometimes the chip runner will actually run the front of the room where you take signups. I mean, most of the time in the industry, that position is called the brush. I take it back. Sometimes in the industry, that position is called the brush. Sometimes it's called a host. There's a bunch of different names for it. But whoever it is that takes names for people to sign up for games and then calls them when it's their turn, that can sometimes be a role that the chip runner does as well. And then they're there for random stuff too. There's a lot of random stuff that just comes up throughout the day.
Give me a Coke. I need a Pepsi.
So then they'll be the one to go get the waiter or waitress and yeah, stuff like that for sure. And also, this one's my favorite. So I said this, I interviewed Jazz on my channel. She's currently a dealer at Texas Card House Dallas, but years ago, she was a chip runner when I worked with her, and I was a supervisor. And I would sometimes, when there was a lot going on, I would ask her, hey, can you do everything for me? And she would. And it's just like the nature of that sort of joke is whenever a supervisor needs anything random to be done, they've got a chip runner. And so they can just ask like, hey, can you go to the back room and get whatever thing we need and all this other stuff. And sometimes the chip runner is expected to keep things clean a little bit. I mean, they're not going to clean up crazy spills that the custodial service will clean up, but stuff like that.
That's a really, really great way to get into the industry and get to know everyone.
Yeah, you create relationships with the supervisors, and do you mind pulling up the thumbnail for that
Sure.
video? So this is Alex, and he's the one that I interviewed. And part of the conversation that I had with him was what I assumed would be true, because it was always the case when I would be a supervisor and interact with the chip runners. I asked him, like, do you create relationships with the supervisors and get a little closer to them than like the dealers do? And he's like, absolutely, because you're standing up and there's little bits of downtime here and there for both you and the supervisor. And so it's a really, like, I told him that the chip runner job is like a 6-month interview. And
yes.
It can really be to your benefit.
That's a great way of putting it. That's a really, really great way of putting it. Because if it really, the only thing casino supervisors hire you for is your personality. Like that's pretty much the biggest thing. And they could teach anyone how to deal, but they can't teach you to have a good personality. So if they've worked with you for 6 months and they like working with you,
difference.
Yeah, huge. That's awesome. That's really, really cool. So, okay, so what we have up on the screen, this is your video where you interviewed him. And then we have the link below. I need to check this out. This looks really cool. Are you going to do any more videos like this, or is this a one and done type of video?
So generally, I do a live stream every single week.
What day? What time?
That makes sense. So generally it's Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, so 11 a.m. Pacific. And for the most part, when I do these live streams, there are QAs where anybody can jump in and just ask me questions about dealing poker, and I get a lot of that. But every once in a while, I will do an interview with somebody that I genuinely want to interview, and I never know when it's going to happen. I've interviewed you before, and I appreciate you coming on the channel, and it's just, whenever I'm like inspired to do an interview, I'll do it. And that was an example of it. The most recent interview I did was with the poker analyst who's one of the commentators on the Texas Card House Dallas live stream, and they have like thousands of people that watch any of their live streams. And I gave him a chance to sort of talk through, get some FaceTime. As a commentator, you don't get any FaceTime. So,
Yeah.
But I got to know him pretty well. It was interesting. So yeah, I do a lot of that stuff.
That's really, really cool. I love that.
Well, I appreciate it. There was one other thing about being a chip runner.
While you're thinking about it, one of the things, so while we were talking about this, the one position that really came to mind as far as being an equivalent to a chip runner is something called a pit clerk. Again, you don't have to have any experience dealing or with the casino. They'll pretty much hire anyone based off of application and everything. And then it's the exact same thing as the pit clerk. You're in there with all of the supervisors, the casino managers. You're doing errands for them. You get to know everyone really, really well. It's a great way to network. And then you learn how the pit is run. You could see how it's run, like the ins and outs of all that. And if you want to learn how to become a dealer, this is a really, really great way to get started. Now, if you're going to do the pit clerk and actually use it as a way to get into the casino, the only tip I have for you is don't start at like Bellagio, because as a break-in dealer, you're never gaining at the Bellagio. So that would pretty much be the only big tip.
So I tried to keep a poker face that whole time to not let anyone know that I had no idea that was a position, but I did not know, and I'm willing to admit it. That's really cool that a pit clerk is a thing.
I was a pit clerk.
That's really cool too. I had no idea, and that actually segues. I have a question for you. As a pit clerk, I know that you can watch the dealers, but do they actually give you an opportunity to get training ever?
No, as a pit clerk, you're basically running around inserting information into the computer. A lot of it is player stats. The player cards that the floor supervisors do, they give to the pit clerks, and then the pit clerks enter that information into the computers. Which remind me to tell you a story later on that I don't want anyone else to hear. So sorry, guys, you guys are not going to hear that story.
I'm so lucky.
But they run around, they do errands, they pick up, paperwork and everything. And it's one of those things where you're constantly running from the time you start your shift to the time you end your shift. But like I said, it's a great way to network.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, as a chip runner, if you're able to work part of your shift like late at night when there's a lot less going on, you can sometimes, if you create a relationship with the supervisor, like we talked about before, you can sometimes get them to let you get in the box on a dead table, get a little bit of training, and it can be a really good way to actually get into that role. And also, once you get to the point where you can sort of deal, if they're ever super short staffed and they need somebody to deal, and they're like, it's such a thing that they need to open a table that they don't care if there's someone that's not perfect at it, they'll throw you in and you'll get some box time too.
That's really nice. I know that in table games, they can't do that. And the reason why is because the Nevada Gaming Control Board forbids anyone to be behind a table if they don't have a gaming license. Even if it's to learn, even if it's to just, you cannot be behind the table if you do not have a gaming license.
See, that's interesting. I would have thought that maybe they would be requiring a gaming license to that position to even let them work there, but you're saying they don't, huh?
I don't think so. Like I said, when I used to be the pit clerk, that was probably about, oh God, now I'm going to show my age. Oh my God, 17 years ago? Jesus Christ. So I was already a dealer at another casino when I was a pit clerk. So I already had my gaming license, and I can't remember if I had to have my gaming license for that position or not. I think I already had it, so it wasn't really a big deal.
That makes sense. I do have one more thing about being a chip runner. Do you want to hear it?
Okay. Yes.
So I'm going to give you, watching right now, a little bit of insight into how to pass the interview.
Ooh. Wait, we want to big screen you for this one. Okay.
So First, before you apply, before you interview for this position, spend some time in a poker room. Okay. If you're able to play the lowest limit game in a poker room, it will give you, say for at least 10 hours total, it will give you the ability to learn the language, understand what the chip denominations are. And those little insights are going to make that conversation show that you care. And it's going to make it a little bit easier for you to connect with the person in the interview, where they don't just think you're trying to get a job, because there's a lot of people that just try to get a job, right? It's going to show that you are engaged and you care about poker. And I mean, look, if you don't care about poker, you're probably not going to enjoy being a chip runner either, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But spend a little bit of time in a poker room, and when you talk to them, remember they are evaluating you to see if you're competent enough to do it and if they want you in the room.
Yep.
Okay. And so that requires some conversational, you just be yourself instead of trying to be a certain person. Just be you, be willing to have a little bit of fun in the interview, and show them that you are able to do things well. And on the other side of it, I'm curious what you think of this. My opinion is, don't tell them that you have great customer service skills.
No.
Show it to them by talking to them.
Yes, completely, totally, 100%. And for anyone out there, this is sort of my motto. If you have to tell someone you're good at something, you're probably not good at something. Like, if you could show that you're good at it, you don't have to go around telling people that you're good at it, you know?
Yeah. And so how do you show it that you have good communication and customer service skills in an interview? Be a welcome, like actually, what is the answer to this?
Eye
think
contact.
It just goes to, ooh, interesting. I'm listening.
Yeah, eye contact, making sure that you're talking directly to them, answering your questions, being personable, friendly, bubbly, smiling. People like it when you smile. Get to know them, really, really put it on for them.
That's good. It's a little bit unfair that you have actually etched flashcards of this stuff in your brain, but that's how I think of you, Heather. You've got all this stuff at the ready all the time. It's really funny.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love everything you just said. So yeah, this type of stuff will make a big difference. Like, be familiar, spend a little bit of time. I did say play poker if you can, but if you don't feel like you have the money for it, spend time in the casino or in the poker room. It might be a little bit hard to figure out how to interact with people when you're in the poker room, but what you can do is things like go to the cashier, buy $100 worth of chips. You can return them anytime you want. Go back to the cashier, return them, make conversation with them about stuff. Just learn, be familiar in the room, and you can talk to poker players too. Stuff
maybe if you have a friend that goes and plays poker, you could go with him and see how it how things work. That way you're not just sitting there being a little creep and everything, like looking around like, oh, I'm going to watch you. I'm going to watch you. I'm going to watch you.
Absolutely true. Another great piece of advice is I do live streams Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And you can literally just jump on my live stream and ask me questions. I am there to answer questions. It's why I do that. It is very hard if you don't have a friend in the casino industry to get reliable, good information. That's literally what I do that for. So
yeah, that's what Marc is for. So check out his video, check out his YouTube channel. We have all of those links down below. So make sure you go check it out. Subscribe, like his videos. And Marc even has a membership site where you could join as a member so you can get extra goodies and everything. Are you on Patreon?
I'm not on Patreon. I actually do it through YouTube. So you can join my channel, and there's different levels of it, but I have a full course on how to deal poker, and I also have a full course on the bonus games, such as, so like my full course for poker teaches Texas Hold'em and everything about dealing in general, and then the upgraded course teaches Omaha Stud and the other mixed games as well that you need to deal something like the WSOP.
That's fantastic. And with the WSOP, if you're going to be a dealer there, my mind was blown that you have to know like 18 plus like poker games in order to get in.
Those. Yeah, it's a lot.
Crazy. I was like, Well, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for sharing all this good information and everything with the audience. Really do appreciate it. And again, if you guys are watching, you got to check out his channel, got to check out his videos. Lots of great information and resources right there. So definitely someone you got to follow.
Appreciate that. Thank you for having me. And now you have to tell me this story that you promised.
Okay, but off air. Okay, everyone, have a good one. We'll see you later. And remember, we have a live stream, or we have a video every Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Take care.